to set up our um, psychic environment for this morning meeting. I would like to remind you that throughout this entire transmission, you have the possibility of using your cell phone, your iPhone. You can open your camera and use the code that you see on the top of the screen to make your donations. We would like to remind everyone that although we are physically closed, we continue to pay our rent for our space, and your donations are absolutely necessary. If you have the resources and the means to do, we really appreciate you doing that. Okay, so if you have an iPhone, just open your camera. You can scan and donate as much as you are comfortable in doing, or you can download the app if you have other type of phones, and also be able to make your donation. So let's get started. And today, I am sorry, I'm looking for my book. I just found it. So our reading is going to be from Our Daily Bread. And the page is called Separation, chapter 125. But I tell you the truth. It is for your own good that I go away. This statement by the Master resounds within our innermost fibers. No one knew how to love as much as he did, yet he was the first to realize that it was fitting for him to live for the good of his companions. What would have happened if Jesus had insisted on remaining? Most likely, the multitudes of earth would have accentuated and consolidated their selfish inclinations. Because the divine friend went to Lazarus in the tomb, people would no longer resign themselves to separation because of death. For having cleansed a few lepers, no one in the future would accept the beneficial help of physical diseases. The logic result would have been a widespread disturbance in the evolutionary mechanism. The Master needed to go away so that the personal effort of each individual would be made visible in the divine plan for the world. Otherwise, the indolence of some and the selfishness of others would have continued. Under different characteristics, this important time for the evangelical family is repeated every day in our kinship clusters. How often do widowhood, orphanhood, the suffering from being apart, perplexity, and pain arise to serve the high purpose of the common good? Recall the above passage from the Gospel. Whenever separation makes you weep, for if the death of the physical body means renewal for those who go away, it is also new life for those who remain behind. Oh my goodness, what an incredible message for the times that we are living. I really, really recommend, if you have a chance, to go back and read it again very slowly and realize how much it fits into the times we're living right now. So I ask you to join me in a short prayer before we bring our guest in by saying, Dear Father, please join us this morning, blessing all of us who are connected to the internet, connected in our minds, in our hearts, in our common purpose of betterment. Bless our speaker of this morning so that he can convey with love the message of your gospel. Help us all, bless all of us who are together so that we can be open, receptive, and attentive to the message of the good news that comes to bring nourishment and consolation to our souls. Thank you for this opportunity, and so be it. All right, dear friends, we would like now to bring in our guest speaker for today, our beloved friend from the Allan Kardec Spiritual Society of Massachusetts, our dear and beloved Flavio Zanetti.
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon or good evening for those of you watching us non-live or later on. So it's a great pleasure to be here again. Sue and Abigail, thanks for the invitation. It's with my heart filled with joy that we plan to spend the next few minutes with all of you guys watching us live. So thank you so much. But our utmost gratitude obviously goes to the benevolent spirits, all those who have the really the responsibility to drive some of these meetings from the Conscious Living Spiritist group. May they involve or embrace all of us so that we can really continue the teachings, continue the learnings, I should say, right? So that we can get a little more closely aligned with our model and guide, who is Jesus, right? So thank you once again for the invitation. It's so great to be here. I know it's not the same as face to face, but at least we have to be thankful for technology that allows us to have these types of events. And Sue, there was a long time no see since yesterday. So funny that Susanna had we had a live meeting with her at our Allan Kardec Spirit Society of Massachusetts here in Boston yesterday, and it was amazing to be able to do that as well. Right? It would be impossible to have Susanna here on Saturday and me there, face to face with you guys in Miami on Sunday. But again, technology allows us to do that. So thank you. So I'd like to spend a few minutes with you guys today talking about transforming sorrows into joy, right? And in a few minutes, you see a slide pop up. That's the topic for today. And the reason why we decided on this topic is when we look at the world today, when you look out the window, or when we look at our televisions, when we read the news, right? Oftentimes people will think, wow, there's so many sorrows. There's so much sorrow, right, in the world that we live in, right? Why is that? Or what do we do? How do we make sense of some of these things? And without even going to a lot of details or specifics, right? Sometimes people see a lot of hatred, in areas of our society. We see coronavirus, we see this, and we see sometimes crime, and we see, a lot of quote unquote difficulties, a lot of sorrows that at least should make us think, is God under control? Is everything happening right under the control or the guidance of our Creator? Is everything going to be okay in the future, right? So these are some of the questions that we'd like to ask, right? So we can develop in the next few minutes. And of course, the topic that I'm proposing, or the hypothesis that I'm proposing for all of you guys today is, yes, there are ways to transform sorrows into joy. And this is what we will see, right, in the next few slides. So allow me to start by telling you a story, right? So that's a story from this gentleman. His name is Maurice Bickham. Maurice Bickham is a grandson of former slaves who grew up in Louisiana, right? And by mid of last century, so around 1950s, right? He was in his house with his wife and 2 kids, and some police, right? Some police detectives were investigating a crime, and they ended up entering Maurice's house. And the crime wasn't committed by Maurice, by the way, right? So it wasn't one of those situations that, hey, the person lives there, let's go check it out. So the detectives ended up going there, and Maurice, who was afraid for his own life and protecting his family, picks up a gun, a shotgun, and ends up shooting those 2 detectives, and taking their physical lives right away from them. So Maurice was sentenced to life in prison. Okay? So life in prison, he's sent out. Funny thing is that interesting thing is he was sent to the Angola prison. And that very same, Angola, prison used to be a farm, Angola farm. And that was the farm that his great-parents used to be slaves. It's a plantation. Right? So he is back to the same location, same physical location, now as a penitentiary. So Maurice spends more than 3 decades in prison. Okay? Maurice is one of those people that never really, right, say, you know what? I'm here. You know, what am I gonna do? Right? I gotta do the best of myself. And then after a few years, there was a new trial, and then Maurice was sentenced to death. Right? Death penalty is legal in Louisiana. So I'd like for you to keep that story in the back of your minds as we navigate through the topic today. Right? How would you react if you saw so much sorrow in your life the way that Maurice saw on his? Okay? Yeah, we all have sorrows, we all have problems, financial problems, relationship problems, work problems. My boss is this, or my so-and-such is that, my neighbor is this. Yeah, we all have these problems. But I would like to say that, not most of us, right, have problems in the same degree as Maurice did. So let's keep that in mind as we navigate this through. So, a couple of questions that I have for us. So, is there a reason for us to suffer? So, was there a reason for Maurice to suffer? Is there a reason for us to have some of these problems in our lives? Right? Did we cause these problems ourselves? Or was somebody else that caused, these problems for us? If your neighbor lets his or her dog in your own yard and the dog poops in your grass, is that your problem or is that your neighbor's problem? Who caused that? Again, simple as that. But as we learn from Spiritism, what works in the micro, small, also works in the macro, right? Big. So there has to be a reason for that, as we learn from Spiritism, right? Next question. Why some are born in opulence with a lot, and others were born in misery? In the example of Maurice, he was born in poverty, grandson of former slaves. He lived in a shack, right? Even though he tried to provide for his family, had a very righteous living, right? Law-abiding citizen and all that, he was still, right, on the end result of their overall story. And the third question, which I'm sure a lot of you, if not all of you, are wondering, can we be perfectly happy on earth? Let's do it. Let's go. Let's do it. All right. So let's move on. Let's define joy. I think it's important to define joy so we know exactly what we're talking about, right? So joy is that emotion that's really driven by a well-being, by success, or by good fortune, or by the prospect of possession what one desires, which is delight. So we feel joy when we're feeling good. We feel joy when we're feeling well, when we're healthy, when we are successful. And notice that that's not only financial success, it's any kind of success. I'll give you a personal story. With the whole, quarantine, I decided I need a new hobby because I was going to spend a lot of time at home, and one can only do so much reading. I love to read. One can do so much, online, classes or live, Spiritist live, meetings. So I decided, you know what? I'd like to take care of my yard, my grass and my plants, and do some yard work. And oh boy, I thought that was going to be a lot easier than it really is. So the grass alone is giving me a lot of effort and trouble and all that. But thankfully, right, I got one part of the house, one part of the front yard taken care of, and very beautiful grass. I'm not going to show you the backyard because there's still a lot of weed in there, a lot of crabgrass and all that. So when I look at my front yard, I feel joy because, hey, I did that. I put fertilizer, I did this, I dethatched, I did all the work, the necessary work that needs to take place for the grass to be really beautiful, lush green, right? Carpet green. But I have still a lot of work to do in my backyard. So when I see that, I feel joy because it's something that I put together, put hours in there, dedication, effort, right? So I see success in that too. And interesting enough, the Merriam-Webster dictionary talks about possessing what one desires, right? Which is delight. We all live looking for delights in our lives, delights in relationships, delight in our profession, delight in our, the activities that we do, right? We look for that, and that gives us joy. That's what the dictionary is talking about. So let's switch the table and let's look at what, sorrow really means. So it's that feeling of deep distress that is usually caused by a loss. So when I lost some of my grass in the backyard because of the crabgrass, because of the weeds, it's like, oh my God, what am I doing? Am I doing correctly? I mean, am I following the steps? Am I not? I mean, I was really disappointed because I put some hours in there, but I mean, my chemicals weren't enough to do that, right? So any kind of disappointment or misfortunes that are suffered either by ourselves or by others that are around us. Give an example. For those folks that are parents out there, when your kid is struggling with anything, either, through going to school or learning or making new friends, I mean, you feel that too, because your kid's not really able to fit in or to really develop him or herself, and you feel that inside of you. By the way, folks, if we don't feel that, there's something wrong with us, because that's natural. That's part of human beings overall. So we all going to feel sorrows and joy throughout our lifetime, right? For example, I felt sorrow at the death of a friend. Thankfully, Spiritism teaches us, or really sheds a light, that it's only physical death, right? We'll be able to meet those folks again at a later date, right? It's a consolation that we get from Spiritism, but sorrow happens nevertheless, as we know. All right, so why do we feel sorrow and joy? Why is that there's always going to be joy and sorrow in our lives? Let me try to explain that with something called Manichaeism. What is that, Flavio? That's a very, fancy or big word, right? So Manichaeism, right, was the doctrine or the religious dogma that was part of Christianity. That's also part of the agnostic, and some pagan folks follow that. It was founded in Persia in the 3rd century by a philosopher called Menes. That's why Manichaeism, right? And the system was based on a supposition of a primeval conflict between light and darkness. So it was widely spread out in the Roman Empire and in Asia 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, Christ era and all that. And also in Turkestan, right, Xinjiang, in China until the 13th century. So throughout centuries, our brains have been hardwired to think in this dualistic approach. What do I mean by that? Dualistic approach, or in this dichotomous thinking, either this or that we can only see the two very opposites of a pendulum. And we most often forget about the middle. So let's give you a couple of examples. So, are you hungry? Yes or no? Maybe I'll be hungry later. I'll be hungry in 15 minutes. That's my answer all the time. Are you hungry? I could eat, So, is it good or bad? Well, it's good for this. It's bad for that. Not necessarily all good. Not necessarily all bad either. Black or white. What about gray? What about the tones, right? That goes from, white to black and all that. Is it fair? Is it unfair? Well, it depends. It's fair in this situation, in this environment. It's unfair in that environment. And I'm sure you can really think about several examples of this dichotomous thinking that our brains learn really how to behave or how to really operate in that area, right? So last but not least, happiness or sadness. Can you feel happy, but at the same time sad? I would argue that yes, you can be happy and sad at the same time. Can you be at war and at peace with yourself? Yes, absolutely. We'll give you a couple of examples. So I'm at peace on some things that I've already conquered myself. I'm not at peace on some of the areas that I still got to do a lot of work on. I still got to be, practice more charity. I still got to be more patient. I still have to love more. Those areas, I'm not at peace. I'm at war with myself because I have to do better. I have to be better with myself. I have to grow and increase and really progress and develop and all these things. So when you look at that, you are at peace, or we are at peace in some areas of our behaviors, and we should be at war with ourselves. Keep in mind, right, with ourselves in some of the other areas that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So when you look at this, it really helps us put some definition, right, in the joys or sorrows. And if we rely on Spirit's book, question 920, the immortal spirits, they answer Kardec, arguing that humans cannot enjoy complete joy while on earth. Let me repeat that. We cannot enjoy complete joy while on earth because life has been given to us as either a trial or an expiation. Meaning there's a lot of exercise that we got to go through. There's a lot of difficulties in learning and schooling and all that. But it depends on ourselves to mitigate our misfortunes and be as happy as possible while on earth. This is an amazing answer, folks. We could be talking about hours just in this answer. Because what the spirits are telling us is that Flavio, Larry, Paul, Joe, Susanna, Abby, forget it, right? You guys, nobody's going to be able to live complete joy while on earth. It's not going to be a joyful 100% of the time. No, it's not. Because guess what? Life is a school, sometimes a hospital, right? Sometimes a church. That's great. But let's remember when we were going to school, and those of you who are still going to school, it was tough sometimes, right? Some of the subjects that we did not have an easy, right, learning them. I'll give an example. I was horrible in biology. Oh my God. If I remember back then, I really struggled with biology. It was really difficult for me. So it was not fun going to biology classes in high school. And it was not fun at all. But I tried my best. I did the work. I did the homework and talked to the teachers, the TA. I mean, I did anything within my, reach to minimize that overall impact so that my misfortunes in biology weren't as awful as I predicted initially. I ended up getting a C+ at the end of the year. I struggle with a lot of those names and human bodies. Susanna, I mean, I envy you and the medical field professionals because I had a hard time even memorizing some of those words. Oh my God. It was like Latin words and it was not easy. Anyways, but thankfully, put a lot of work in there, did a lot of homework, as I said. I was really able to minimize that in a way that I got a pass with a C+, I still know the difference between, my liver and my heart, thanks God, right? And my lungs and all that. So the very basics, biology or anatomy, I can still do all right. But it was not easy, folks. And I'm sure this is a very simple and basic example. This happens to a lot of parts of our lives. A lot of areas, as I mentioned before, perhaps relationships, perhaps your profession, perhaps the way you relate to yourself and to your family, to your relatives. There's several things we can really dissect this with. But at the end of the day, what's important to remember from this question from the Spirit's book is that we are the ones responsible to mitigate, to diminish, to reduce, try to really extinguish misfortunes and be as happy as we can, okay, with our lives. So that in alone answers the third question that I had on my, in the beginning. Is it possible for human beings to enjoy perfect happiness upon earth? So it is not possible, folks. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but right, as we learn from Spiritism, we're not going to be happy 100% of the time, right? That's not going to work. That's not going to work because, once again, we live in a planet of trials and explanations. As we progress, as we develop, we'll have some roadblocks. We have some barriers that we need to overcome. And each person is going to have their own barriers, their own difficulties. Because guess what? After we overcome those, we feel that sense of joy. Remember that definition? We feel that sense of success. With the example of my grass, with the example of biology, whatever it is, biology, anything, we feel the joy. Yes, yes, I was able to do it. Oh my God, thanks God, I was able to do that, right? So, really, really important to keep that in mind, that we're not going to be able to be 100% happy or live joyous moments at all times. So, it will be a combination of happy and challenging, right? As we know. But it's really important to remember that while we're going through those sorrows and difficult times, I'm sure we all know it's not going to be joyful, but that's also not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to be the end of it. Oh, because you cannot pass biology, or even if I had flunked biology, guess what? I would have to do it again. Maybe go back to school and learn biology anymore. Maybe do some more reading and talk to more people. There are mechanisms. There are ways for us to overcome anything and everything, folks. That we put the intention, the motivation, the discipline, and really connect with our guardian angel, right? With our God, so we can get the inspiration to get the work done. Anything, folks. When we talk about anything is possible, this is one of the examples that really, really anything is possible. So, once again, right, this dichotomous thinking and joys and sorrows. But let's now take a little detour here. Let's talk about happiness. What is happiness overall? Is happiness the same as joy? Or is happiness the same as pleasure? Right? So when you look at that, we're arguing that we cannot be happy 100% of the time. We cannot be joyful 100% of the time. Is that because God is punishing us? Is that what we believe? Is that what Spiritism teaches us? Is God being vengeful, against us? Right? So folks that really interpret God in that way, we like to argue that it's a very small way, or a very, a minuscule way to describe God that is not very fair. Because if God was punishing us, right, and not punishing somebody else, does God love me the same as he loves somebody else? Or I'll use, right, a very actual or current, course of events, right? If I'm born in the United States today, right, with a black skin, my life is going to be much harder than if I'm born with a white skin. Nobody refuses that. That's data, right? Nobody should refute data. We know that. That's how it is today. Does that mean that God loves me less than somebody else? So this argument or this theory was put in place centuries ago to really drive systemic racism, right? So again, what we learn from Spiritism is much bigger than that, folks, right? God is fair, and God is just to every one of his or its children, as we know that. God is righteous. And God, as this sovereignly just and good parent, he cannot love one son or one daughter more than the other. So when we look at these things, right, that, hey, what about this people? What about those people? What about my situation? If I'm born in opulence, as one of the questions before, if I'm born, suffering, how can I make sense of these things, right? It's really important that we understand that God never punishes anybody. We learn from Spiritism that God never punishes. Same way, or such so that Spiritism does not prohibit anything. Spiritism gives us the toolbox or the explanation for things. Hey, Flavio, if you do this, that's going to happen to you. Joe, if you do that, that's going to happen to you. Mary, if you really drive this behavior, those are the consequences, and so forth. So, one more question I have for you guys, right? Can we be happy amidst so much suffering, and even amongst people that don't even have the minimum needs? That's a great question, right? Because there isn't really a right or wrong answer here, but as we learn from Spiritism, nothing happens by accident. Nothing. Nothing happens by mistake. Even though we have free will, we get that, we're able to really, you know, drive our own actions, but nothing happened by mistake. Same way that I'm sorry to disappoint you folks, but you're not special. You may have thought yourself as being special. Maybe your parents had told you that you were special, but in reality, we're not special, right? We're not special because we don't mean more than anybody else. Everybody is meaningful in the same way. However, we are all very important to God because guess what? We are His creation or God's creation, and we are co-creators. We continue to create in this God's development. We create or we develop our families. We develop, things at work. We create products, services, solutions. We change the environment. We build technology. Somebody had to do a lot of work to build this for us to be talking to each other, right? I'm 1,500 miles away from folks in Miami. Who knows? There might be folks listening to us that are across the world. Somebody had to do a lot of work to build this. So we are co-creators in a way that once we do that, right, we really experience that happiness, those moments of joy, of a work well done, of something being developed, of raising a child, right? Or really, again, there's a lot of activities that happen to everybody that can really stitch the meaning from happiness, right? And some pleasurable opportunities as well. So even though there's no right or wrong answer on this, but I'd like to argue that, yes, we can be happy amongst people that are suffering. And I'll tell you why. If you look at the, once again, right, current situation of events, if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement, there's a lot of folks there that are not black, but they see the injustice that's being committed. They see that something's wrong with our society that has to change. And they're there. They're marching, they're talking, they're arguing, they're writing books, they're putting YouTube channels, they're doing a lot of activities. And they're feeling great for being able to drive this march or this cause. Yes, other folks are suffering, but thanks to their work, a change is happening in our world. So yes, it is. I would like to argue that, yes, it is possible to be happy amongst, right, others that are suffering and whatnot. But it's also important to know that nothing happens by accident. And I was arguing before, we're not special, but we all very important to God, its creation, and us to continue co-developing, co-creating, right, in the world that we live in. So that's what I would like to argue, right, and leave you guys with. Moving on, I'd like to bring in a very important philosopher, Immanuel Kant, who published this book, published the first works called The Critique of Pure Reason. That was first published in 1781. 1781, so a little less than 100 years before the Spirit's book was published. Okay? And it was one of the most influential works in the history of philosophy by that time. Right? So what's important to understand here is that when he talks about happiness as this continuous well-being, enjoyment of life, complete satisfaction with one's condition, right? That is for us to look at the life that we have in a very different prism, or really, angle, so to speak. I'll give an example. There's a Harvard psychologist whom I had the honor to meet with before. His name is Daniel Gilbert, and he wrote a great book called Stumbling on Happiness, which I carry with me everywhere I go. It's a little pocket book. And this book, he talks about the difference between a paraplegic and winning the lottery. So imagine if something happens to you, and a very unfortunate event, that you lose your movements in your legs. Okay, we cannot walk anymore. We become disabled. Then imagine an event that happens to us: winning the lottery, multi-million-dollar lottery. So he drives two curves, right? One that wins the lottery, one that gets, becomes a paraplegic, right? The happiness level. That's why the book is called Stumbling on Happiness. When you win the lottery, there's a spike. Are you following me? There's a spike in quote-unquote sense of happiness. Okay? There's a spike. And then what happens? Once that love affair is done, you look at your bank account, you have all the money, you win the lottery, you become famous, your neighbors know you. You're going to find out you have relatives you never even spoken to before. Yeah? You're going to find out that you owe money to people you don't even remember owing money to them. So a lot of things are going to happen. And that's common case for pretty much everyone that wins the lottery. Then that spike starts to fall down. Okay? Let's flip the curve. Let's look at the paraplegic. Right? What happens? The tragic event goes really down because you're in you're in despair. You think that your life's going to be over, and this and this and this. The curve goes way, way down. People. It's easy to think about that, right? Then the curious fact is that after 6 months, folks, it does not take 10 years. 6 months. This is a research that Daniel Gilbert did for 20 years. He interviewed over 2,000 people, paraplegic and lottery winners. After 6 months, when the curves start to, go to balance again, after 6 months, a mark, the happiness curve for the paraplegic goes above the happiness curve from the lottery winner. He goes even beyond 6 years. So extrapolating the results, 6 years, the curve from the paraplegic is way up there, and the curve from the lottery winner is way down there. What does that tell us, folks? What does the study that Daniel Gilbert did tell us? That no, we should not look for opportunities to lose our legs. No, don't do that, please. No reckless behaviors. No, don't do that. What he's telling us is that happiness is this state of mind. It's how we look at the current reality of our life and take or get the most out of it. A lot of examples where folks that won the lottery lost family members, people around, the house did some weird things, right? He even talks about a guy that, was a middle-class guy here from Waltham, Massachusetts, had a swimming pool, like a smaller swimming pool in the backyard. He just put concrete on top of the pool because he was afraid somebody was going to jump in. And the whole, situation that arises from these very, dramatic, state of things in our lives, either winning the lottery or suffering a tragic accident, really dictates how we see things, right? So Daniel Gilbert, in this book, he argues that even though happiness, there's no definition of happiness, it's not money, it's not this, it's not, but we should all look for what makes us feel happy. Whatever it is that makes us feel happy, we should go after. If it's reading a book, if it's meeting Sunday morning to learn about, Spiritism or Jesus teachings, go for it, right? If it is that taking a walk, or, in a park, or playing games or sports or swimming or walking or running or, walk, whatever it is that makes you feel happy, focus your time on it, right? Spend time doing what makes you feel happy. Because that's what we control, right? Other things we don't control. Yes, who talks to us. That's why the book is called Stumbling on Happiness. So, in this very simple book, I would say simple because it's small, but very, very profound, the spirits tell Kardec that our happiness is going to be naturally proportional or proportionate to the happiness we provide others. Flavio, what does that mean? The more we drive happiness towards others, the happier we'll be. That's why charity is such an amazing activity. Because the more charity that we practice, the greater we feel. That sense of accomplishment, joy, right? Does that mean that my life is not full of problems? Oh, there's a lot of issues still happening that I have to fix myself. But I still try my best, right? To practice charity, to call some people once in a while, to really, ask for forgiveness, to look at, again, we have to try to do that. Because that's how, it's almost like a fuel that we keep putting back in our tanks so we can keep on going. We can keep on driving, we can keep on really moving, right? So allow me to share a few more interesting things with you on some academic research around happiness. So I'm going to real quickly here because I know you guys are very happy folks. So we don't have to spend a lot of time. I'm just kidding. So, kidding, but I'm not kidding, right? Because we have to be very thankful for what we have. And this study, this academic study that shows, again, part of this is also by Daniel Gilbert, but it's across the board, right? Happiness is usually or mostly driven by these behaviors. One, relationships and social interaction. Number one on the list. That's why with this whole coronavirus, it's been very difficult for a lot of folks. It's being hard for a lot of people. Because guess what? We're not really, allowed to really spend time together and whatnot, right? That's why let's try not to lose focus, folks. There's always a telephone. There's always Skype or FaceTime or video calls. There's always, right, the capabilities for us to stay close as we know it. Marital status, okay, that's a sign of happiness. And I was doing this talk a couple of years ago, live, obviously, and then somebody raised their hand that, hey, I'm happy because I got divorced. I said, okay, marital status is not only getting married, but also getting divorced in this scenario, right? That we learned. So again, the academic research on happiness, in this way that I'm arguing here, is the marital status, right? So that really showcases, right? Employment. So folks are happy because they're employed, right? Oh, my beautiful daughter just brought me some coffee. Thank you, honey. A little interruption here. Thank you. Love you. So employment, folks are happy, right? Because they're able to work and they're able to contribute to society. They're able to really do things. Happiness is really driven by health, right? Every time we lose our health or, quote unquote, something happens to us, we feel how important that is, right? It's the, what's the word I'm looking for? Scarcity model, right? We don't really give, reason to that until that becomes scarce, right? Optimism, folks that are more optimistic in general, in nature, are happier folks. Religious involvement, look at that, right? We are here. It's driven happiness. This is helping us be happier with our lives as we know it, right? Of course, income. Funny thing, study about income. Same Daniel Gilbert that does that. He talks about there is a threshold of income that makes people really healthy, really happy. And he goes around like this. If you make $500 a month, and he uses those numbers, $500 a month, right? You're struggling. Let's be honest, right? You're living under poverty line. You're struggling to make ends meet. If you multiply your salary by 5, okay, that becomes $2,500 a month. You feel a huge boost in happiness. Okay? Everybody, can really make sense of that. Correct? However, if you make $2,500 a month, 5 times 500, you feel that boost. But would you feel the same boost or even bigger boost if you multiply that salary by 5? So he does that. He does a study that shows folks that are making $2,500 a month, and all of a sudden they ended up making $12,500 a month, which is 2,500 times 5. Does that make them happier? And the answer, he arrived at a marginal boost, almost non-existent boost. So if you're below poverty and you get that, really happens, you see the boost. If you're living a decent life already, and you get that 5 times increase in your salary, you don't feel that boost any longer. Right? And last but not least, folks, if you are not feeling a lot of happiness for whatever reason, just get close to happy people. Just stay close to happy people, right? That's something we can always do. Find someone that's happy and stay as close as possible. And that's going to also make you happy by osmosis, right? No, jokes aside. That's a huge study that has, we've seen. We read, a couple of papers around several authors that did that. But let me ask you a poignant question. Can money really buy happiness? So if we were live, I would ask you to raise your hand if you think that money can buy happiness. Because I cannot do that because I can see you guys. Let me tell you what happened in my previous examples of this. So oftentimes people say, no. Money, maybe one or two people raise their hands to say, yeah, money can buy happiness. But the vast majority would say, no, money cannot buy happiness. I believe you all agree or you all have seen that before, but then let me give you a different perspective. Yes, money can buy happiness, according to Michael Norton, as long as, or so long as, you spend the money on someone else. Let me repeat that. Money can really buy happiness so long as you spend the money on someone else. That's easy, right? For us to understand or to really acknowledge. Every time we give a gift, for example, we buy something. Oh, I think my wife's gonna like that, or I think my daughters are gonna like that. I think my friend's gonna like that. I just buy something. Hey, dude, I bought this for you. Hope you like it. That gives you happiness, right? Giving that or gifting somebody something. Or if you're walking and then somebody asks you for food, right? You go into the like a restaurant, get a sandwich or a burger. Hey, dude, just get a burger. That makes us happy if we do that. So as long as we're using that money on somebody else, yes, that is really driving happiness. And guess what? That is exactly what Jesus told us. Give, and it shall be given unto you. That's in Luke chapter 6, verse 38. The more we give, the more we're given, right? So if we use, or if we put the appropriate use of our financial resources, we can definitely promote well-being, not superfluous things, but well-being. We can really drive social technology progress, right? Somebody had to really put a lot of money down for somebody to invent the browsers, all the technology involved for us to have this meeting. There's a lot of money, involved here, as we can imagine, right? We can always use that for assisting those in need, and we can drive prosperity in different parts of the world, as we know that. So, as Joanna the Angelus argues, financial resources is an excellent tool that can really foster intelligence, knowledge, and therefore happiness as well. So let us use these words so we can make better sense of our financial resources, right? We can really put that to work to those ones that we love, that we care, and that we really are able to help. So let's take a little different angle here and look at the world that we live in, and look at all the inequities and all the unrighteousness that happen everywhere across the board. So in this picture, I'd like for you to see or to imagine, right? In the first top left, it's a photo from Bangladesh where we see, the couple in the carriage, bringing, things to be sold, usually things that they find in the streets. And behind that, it's an Italian sports car, right? So it's a huge dichotomy, right? Once again, from those folks that haves and have-nots. If you look at the bottom right, you see from my hometown of Sao Paulo, those are luxury condominiums that I'm not sure if you can see on the screen, but every one of these porches, they are built in a way that they're not juxtaposed on top of each other, because there's a 6,000-gallon swimming pool in every one of these porches. 6,000-gallon swimming pool in every one of these porches. And right in front of it, it's one of the largest slums, the third largest slum in the world. So, yes, there is a lot of inequity. Yes, there is a lot of wrong righteousness. That is correct. But one thing that we learned from Spiritism that just came back from the previous slide, Joanna the Angelist talks to us, and we'll understand from the Spirit's book is sometimes, or fortune is a trial that is usually more dangerous than poverty. Because if we don't know what to do with what's in excess from what we have, we're going to be responsible for that. All of us are responsible for the things that we have in excess. Right? So let's keep that in mind. That's question 925 from the Spirit's book. Right? So, Flavio, I know, I get it, but man, you have no idea what I'm going through. You have no idea what my family's going through. You have no idea what this coronavirus brought to, our dynamics. You have no. That's correct. I have no idea. But what we can really grasp and hold very tight is what Spiritism teaches us, right? And that is suffering. What is it for everybody? Does everybody suffer on Earth? Is suffering something that was caused here, was caused in the past? Is suffering something that I can't get rid of it? So the Spirit's book has a huge section around suffering that I invite you to go spend some time in there. The fortune, there's a trial, is also there. It's one of the questions. And what I wanted to mention here for us to really build the case of sorrows and joy is that most of the time, we are the artisans or the creators of our own suffering in this life. Okay? If we would practice the law of God, we would spare ourselves many misfortunes and enjoy happiness as great as our existence. So let's dissect this from the Spirits are telling Kardec. Basically, this is, we can really drive this in a way that's as follows, right? The closer we get with God, the more we practice the laws of God, the happier we become. The more we distance ourselves from the laws of God, the more suffering occurs. The more issues, tribulations, trials, and everything else happens to us. Curiously enough, if you look at the poet Khalil Gibran, look at what he writes. We choose our joys and sorrows long before we experience them. So he's arguing that, guess what? We are the ones that chose these sorrows. And despite the fact that most of us cannot remember, thanks God, what we did previously, this is only one chapter of our own existence, right? This is only one chapter. So if you look at a Netflix series, I love this analogy. If you look at a Netflix series, this is just one small chapter of our own existences. Only one chapter. And because we did that, we did choose those things, those sorrows and joys, right? It's up to us to really drive them forward. Exactly what the gospel says, right? That selfishness is the source of all vices. As charity is the source of all virtues. Destroy one, selfishness, and develop the other, meaning become more charitable. And this should be everyone's effort if we want to achieve happiness now and for the future world. So, folks, if you really want to transform sorrow into joy, we have to take a deeper look into ourselves, the inner journey, and really tackle our selfishness. Really tackle how much we're still selfish, how much we're only thinking about ourselves. And similarly speaking, we need to really put some effort into becoming more charitable. We need to drive those behaviors. Be more forgiving to others or towards others. Be more indulgent to others' shortcomings. right? And be benevolent to anybody that really comes across to us. In the same way, as we know, or as we go back, right, to Maurice Bickham. What did he do? Maurice spent 37 years incarcerated, 10 of those, okay, on death row for a crime that he did not commit. When he was asked, hey, Maurice, when he left prison, he was interviewed, as you can imagine, right? Hey, Maurice, how was your time behind bars? Can you define? So most of us will probably say it was terrible, it was difficult, it was harsh. What is the adjective that he uses? He says it was a glorious experience. I'm gonna say it again. It was a glorious experience. I'm not sure about you folks, but the word glorious, it's usually associated with religious activities. Really, when you feel the joy, you put that into perspective and you feel that's glorious, right? He used glorious to describe the time that he spent 37 years in one of the harshest prisons in the United States. One of the harshest prisons in the United States. He even goes beyond that to say he does not have any moment of regret. Meaning, he doesn't regret. Every opportunity that he had, he helped others. He helped others not commit suicide. He helped others not, lose control. He helped others really, follow the rules, and that's what he did. So he was thrown in the popular, slang or jargon. He was thrown a semi-truck full of lemons, maybe rotten lemons, some of those, and he separated them all. And he made lemonade for thousands of people, thousands of lives that he impacted. And he continues to impact. He continues to impact them because even though, right, he was 94 when this picture was taken, he still goes everywhere trying to really fight against the death penalty. So when we talk against death penalty, right, that's just, but when he talks, he lived it. 37 years, 10 years on death row. He's a live example of someone that transformed the worst of all sorrows, being incarcerated, being thrown into jail, being locked in a 6x8 cube for a crime they did not commit. Remember, he shot those detectives in self-defense. And he's a true living example of what we learn from Jesus, that our sorrows will turn into joy. Folks, it does not matter how hard life is for you right now. For all of us right now. What's important is for us to remember what Spiritism teaches us, that everything will pass, that these sorrows will become joy in the future. As Maurice taught us, as a simple example as my front yard, my backyard, my biology class, whatever it is, a child that's born, when my kids were born, I thought, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I still don't, in several areas, by the way. But a lot of the sorrows that have happened along the way have been transformed into joy. When I look back at the huge problem that I faced when I was 18, 24, when I moved, from one country to another, right? I landed in New York City without knowing anybody. All these sorrows that one may think, they've now been transformed into joy. And I can guarantee you, if we do our parts, if we drive with motivation, as I mentioned in the beginning, if we're motivated, if we put the effort, the work, the discipline, if we learn more about it, if we read, if we get the teachings, we internalize them, we put them into practice, and we, along the way, connect with God, with the benevolent spirits, with our guardian angels, the future will be better, folks. you will surpass your sorrows and you will transform them into joy. Trust me on this. God bless you and all of us. May Jesus, our utmost inspiration, continue to give us everything that we need, all the ideas, the knowledge, capabilities, so we can continue working in our own transformation. Sue, back to you.
Awesome, Flavio. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Wonderful explanation. I love the story. I had heard it before. I have no idea how this guy turned that experience into glorious, but he's definitely an inspiration. We can try to turn our smaller miseries into glorious opportunities as well and start from there. But I really appreciate it. I would like to remind everybody who has joined us this morning, please, if you can, make sure that whenever possible, make your donations here online. We have our scan code that you can right there. It just showed up. So just open your iPhones, your camera, and you can scan and make a contributions. If you don't have an iPhone, you can download the app in order to do that. So that's a way you can continue to help us because our physical space remains and we continue to pay our bills. And so it's really, really important for the ones who have the possibility to please do so. I hope you enjoy our lecture today. Remember that conscious living remains open online. All our activities, courses continue to be delivered in our different platforms. If you need information about that, don't hesitate to contact one of us, as well as fraternal counseling in these times of challenges for all of us. Please don't be alone. Reach out. We are here, although physically distant. We continue to be connected. Consciously, we continue to operate. We are helping each other, supporting each other. Don't be alone. Reach out to us. Okay, we will close now with our short prayer, thanking Flavio once more for his virtual presence and friendship. And I ask you to join me, asking our dear Lord to bless us all. We are extremely thankful for the opportunity of this morning. We ask you, dear Lord, to give us the strength that at times it seems that we lack, to give us the hope in the days that we don't feel any hope within our hearts, to bless humanity, particularly the ones who are undergoing the very difficult trials of material losses, of the losses of loved ones, of loneliness, and so many other troubles. Please be close to all of us, embrace us tightly with your love, and let us help us to feel that you're always with us. And as Flavio said, better days will come and joy will be reestablished within the hearts of the ones who courageously persist without losing hope. Thank you again for this wonderful morning, and so be it. All right, dear friends, thank everybody for joining us again. Once more, have a blessed Sunday, and I hope to see you again next weekend with us. Take care.